guys. I think that's working. Hopefully this is working and not choppy. Kind of hard to tell sometimes. Let's see. Hey guys, how's it going? Is everything working or is it choppy? Hopefully it's working okay. I'm trying to get logged in on here. Hey guys, good morning. Hoping, does it look good? Hey, good morning. Cool. I've got, we moved the furniture around a little bit, so I don't have it normally where we have it set up. And then I've got like the table on the table because we're got the vacuum running. So I'm like trying to sit over here in front of the window and make it all work. It's just not my usual setup. Hey, good morning. Cool. I'm glad everything is working well. How are you guys all doing? Everyone having a good Saturday morning so far? I'm trying to get it pulled up on my laptop so I can read the comments because they go away so fast on my phone. Let's see. Where am I at? Here we go. All right, now I can see you all when you leave comments. This works so much better. Let me just make sure my volume's turned off. Okay. Oh, yes, happy Caturday. Lily loves her cat, so she calls Saturday Caturday. Every Saturday. She's in like cat pajamas, cat shirt, cat everything. Used her cat coffee cup this morning, and happy Caturday, everyone. All right, Tamara, you were at Aldi. Did you do like a monthly grocery shopping trip or like a week or 2 weeks or just like regular run to Aldi and do stuff? We always do our monthly grocery shopping trip. So that's what I think of anytime I think of Aldi. But I know obviously not everybody shops for a whole month at a time. So we need to get to Aldi hopefully this week. I will get our monthly grocery shopping trip done because I've not done that. And so we're like pretty much out of food. 1 week though, that's pretty good. Being able to go and get like a full week's worth of groceries in one trip and be done. That's a big help even. I mean, not everybody has to do a whole month or anything like that, but that's got to be nice to be able to do one for the week and get it done. Tamara, you sent over those books, and Brandon, he loved the book that you sent for him. I love mine too, but Brandon's been loving his, and Travis is working on his own story that he's writing about Simon from Cyrene with the man who helped Jesus carry his cross. So he's been working on that all week, and he actually has been reading parts of the book that you sent Brandon to kind of give him some inspiration as well, as far as writing a story based off of a true biblical event and kind of like filling in the blanks, you know, well, what maybe happened to that person after, you know, this little part that we know about, you know, their life that scripture shows. So they've been kind of referencing the book that you sent Brandon to kind of play into that he's working on. So it's been really cute to see. It's been pretty fun. Yeah, they're totally loving it. It's a great book. And we hadn't heard of that one. So I props for coming up. You know, I love it when people have stuff to recommend that you've never heard of before, you know, and then it like opens up this whole new world to you when you find these different, you know, products or things. So they've been loving it. Don't know if any of you guys got to see our Mary More Than Martha this morning, but we were talking about just like screen time, video games, phones, stuff like that. And kind of how me and then my friend Lexi within the season blog, how we kind of handle those various topics. I think that's a big one, especially today. I wanted to try to keep the theme about biblical parenting. So how we look at different things, parenting related with a biblical scope. So it kind of worked out well that the screen time one was our discussion this week on Mary More Than Martha. And next Saturday for Mary More Than Martha, we are going to be talking about more so women's relationships, how we view other relationships with women and how we look upon ourselves as women, kind of that type of a topic, how we deal with that. We had already talked about last week how we view men in society. And so we want to go ahead and spend some time focusing on women, how we deal with that, because women can be known to be very judgmental and mean and a lot of bad things to one another. So I think it was a topic definitely worth taking some time to discuss and talk about. So that will be next week's that I'm really excited to share. I think it was a good conversation. It actually went a lot longer than we even thought it was going to, but I think it's good and I think it's helpful. So I'm excited to share that one. This week, podcast-wise, we shared some stuff, kind of finishing up our interview series and talking about just church doctrine, home church doctrine, what's the doctrine that you're being fed and whatever your church group might be. I asked some questions related to church on my Instagram stories this week, and I could not believe, hey, Gina, good morning. I cannot believe the responses I got from you guys in regards to those church questions this week. I don't think I've ever gotten a greater response than what we got this week. I typed them all out into a spreadsheet so Brandon and I could pray over them and think through them. And it took me forever to get them all typed out. But I really appreciate you guys just being very honest with us and sharing your real struggles and what you're looking for. Hey, Morgan remembered the time difference twice now. Good job. I hate time differences. It is really hard. We'll have like video chat meetings and stuff with other people and trying to remember where everyone's at and what time it's in. It's difficult. It really is. But this week, I think we really shared a lot when it came to just church and doctrine and things like that, as far as our ANP Home Church ministry and what we are feeling called to do in that front. So we shared a lot about that this week. And Tuesday's podcast, Brandon and I are really sitting down and discussing what we feel called to do and what we see going forward. So I think it's going to be a really, really important one. And I'm really excited to share that with you guys on Tuesday. And then next Thursday's podcast is another one where we go through where Lexi just throws out some hot topics that are just in the news and just kind of rapid fire throws them out to us. And we kind of take them as they are. And her husband's joining in on that one as well. So it was a really fun one. That one will be really good. I also want to talk about, so this week we're going to talk about like parenting from a biblical perspective and kind of do some Q&A on that. Next Saturday, I want to talk more about marriage, just kind of healthy marriage relationship, anything like that. Any questions you guys might have for us and want to ask them, you can message them to me throughout the week and we will deal with all of that next Saturday at noon. Kind of neat because next week is Valentine's Day. So Brandon and I even have a video where we're going to be just talking about more marriage related type things. So that's kind of the stuff that we have coming up for next week anyway. So if you have any suggestions or questions or anything related off of anything of that sort, you can definitely message them to us this week. But that's what we have going on. Today we will be doing our Sabbath that I shared with you guys, kind of how we do our simple Sabbath routine. Looking forward to that. These past couple weeks have been really hectic. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And then as soon as we get done with this live, I'm going to go pick up my mother-in-law. We're going to bring her to the house and hang out. If you guys all keep her in your thoughts and prayers, she's having a bit of a rough week. So just think of her. Her name is Melinda, and keep her in your prayers. I'm excited to bring her over and give her some extra grandkid time this weekend because, I mean, every grandparent, I think, needs more grandkid time. So that will be good for her. I'm glad you enjoyed the Mary More Than Martha. I want to kind of pull up some of the topics that you guys sent me when I asked on our Instagram stories regarding biblical parenting, and kind of just talk about them and share about it and then see what you guys feel and think. And I mean, we want these lives to be open conversations that we're all having together. So kind of get your guys' feedback on it. Tamara, you said you got the 24/6 book. Have you started to read it yet? I think 24/6 is a great book. It definitely was one that got me to really think about the whole concept of Sabbath and just kind of incorporating that into our week. So I think that's a really good one. I know some people get like super legalistic about things, and people can get like all wrapped up in arguing what Sabbath, should be and shouldn't be and all of that other stuff. And that was in no way my interest in doing any of that. And I feel like the book 24/6 definitely goes about it that way as well. And leaves things open, obviously, for your own personal convictions and things, which is important. So I think it's a good one to kind of recommend as far as, kind of just how you view the Sabbath and looking at that. Good. I'm glad. I hope you enjoy it. It was one for me that I feel like I read through it really quick because it was just, it was very interesting and had a lot in it. 24/6. Who is it by? Because now that I'm saying it and I'm not looking at it in front of me, actually, I think it might be up on my shelf. Unless you remember off the top of your head, Tamara. I don't want to say the wrong name. Nope, it is not up here on my shelf. So we'll have to look it up, or Tamara, if you remember, and you can let her know, because I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I have gum in my mouth. I'm going to take it out real quick so I'm not choking on my gum while we do this. Matthew Sleep, thank you. I'm thinking Michael Pollan, which I know isn't it, but I knew it was an M name. Matthew Sleep. He's got some other ones too. He's got some good books about a few different topics, but that's a good one. Okay, so biblical parenting. I think obviously we are all parents, and so there's a lot of questions that come with that. Kind of like what we addressed with the screen time one, right? There's some things that scripture isn't necessarily completely clear on, and that leaves us, kind of in a bit of a struggle trying to figure out how to apply these things. And we're all trying to do what's best for our kids, obviously, and it's a struggle sometimes. It's not an easy thing, right? Kids don't come with instruction manuals. It's not a like one size fits all answer. And obviously, as we discuss these things, anything that we say is not because Brandon and I are perfect parents and we have everything figured out or anything like that, because we're not. I think that's why we do the vlogs and we do the things like that, just to show our family and where we're at and kind of the things that we struggle with. Maybe there are some things that I think we're getting right maybe in this moment, but we are not saying any of this or discussing any of these topics because we think we're super awesome and perfect at all of this. And so you need to do it like we do it. Morgan, you're enjoying Chipotle and Livecast. Really, you should come over here and have Chipotle with me, because Chipotle sounds delicious. And the closest Chipotle to us is like 40 minutes away. It's my brother's favorite, and he's constantly fussing about how we have no Chipotle near us. So you should come over here. But in talking about these parenting things, I think it's, instead of trying to come at it like we have it all figured out and we have it perfect, I'd much rather sit down as a community here and discuss these things, because I think we all can learn from one another. And that's super important, because even if I get something figured out really, really awesome for one of my kids, that doesn't mean even it's going to work for my other kids. They're all so different. And there's so many circumstances here with everything that it's a constantly changing process, or at least that's what we have found anyways. But something that, I don't know if you guys heard our podcast where Brandon talked about parent like your Father in heaven. But it was just this point where the more and more we are discussing parenting type things, the more and more he just got drawn back to, well, if God is our Father, so he's this ultimate father figure that we all want to look up to, how does he deal with us? How does he go about it? Let's search scripture and see how he deals with these things. And then how can we as parents kind of copy it and follow his lead in how he deals with these things and deal with our children in the same way. So I think that's something that we kind of come back to time and time again whenever we're talking about these things. So I want to first start talking about, I asked, what's something that you struggle with when it comes to parenting? Was one of the questions I asked on Instagram. And I got a lot of responses. And the funny thing, and kind of just like with when I asked the church questions, is that the answers were all pretty much the same. So there were many, many answers, but as I listed them all out, they pretty much were in the same categories. The first category, I would say one of our biggest struggles that all of us are dealing with is patience. That's one of the first kind of cop-outs I get when people talk about, oh, I would love to homeschool my kids, but I'm just not patient enough. Okay, I don't think any of us would say that we are patient enough. I think, I think patience is one that we all struggle with and probably are all falling short on. Um, and so I think that that is definitely one that we all every day have to wake up and kind of assess ourselves on and deal with. Because again, if we're looking at God, how does he? Well, he's the most patient. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine if God stopped being patient with you, like how you stopped being patient with your own family, with your own kids? We'd be in big trouble, right? I know every day I have to remind myself throughout the day, be patient, be kind. Tamara even brought up the point not being able to tell your adult children, where they're wrong on things and trying to figure that out. I think a lot of that kind of can go back to patience as well, right? To be consistent in prayer and leading by example, but being patient that God will work in their hearts and do what we want to see him do or greater, right? But a lot of that is patience, and it's hard to be patient and to sit back and let him work his thing, work it all out. But remembering that we can be just consistent in prayer. And I know sometimes it feels like we're not doing anything. Yes, I saw it. It feels like we're not doing anything when we're just praying and waiting, but that's his patience, because that is such a difficult and heartbreaking thing to have to sit through and wait through and see what he has going on. I mean, that's such a hard one. And you specifically with that, because you told us that before, that's something that we've been praying for you. Hey, Tabby, how's it going? Lily, I'm sure we'll be back here momentarily. So patience was the first one I think that most all of us agreed on that we definitely struggle with. Another one was yelling or keeping a calm, quiet voice when we're talking to our kids, and not losing our marbles and raising our voice when we talk to people. I feel like most of the time we have the reaction to raise our voice as we try to raise the importance of what we're saying, when really more times than not, the opposite of that is true. If you really want your kids to pay attention, I've noticed that if I actually lower my voice and get quieter, in many instances, they're like, oh crud, I have to pay attention a little bit more to what you're saying. But yelling is a hard one. You coming in here, Deb? Okay. I come from a family of yellers. We're a bunch of yelling people. My mom, my grandma, it's just lots of shouting, lots of yelling. I don't even realize, I don't think when I do it very often, but that was something that a few years ago I wanted to really work with. And I ordered a really cheap set of, actually have one on that I used to remember what side for nursing, but I just got these cheap little stackable rings off of Amazon, or I know some people will do like hair ties or bracelets or something on one hand. And I had 5 of them, and I'd start on my right hand every day. And every time I raised my voice or I yelled, I would take a ring and switch it over to the other hand. And just to help becoming aware of how often I did it, right? So then you could try to like challenge yourself, like, I don't want to have to move my rings today or whatever, your bracelets from one hand to the other, and try to watch, because so many of these things I think that we're going to talk about with parenting, it doesn't start with your kids, it starts with you. How are you behaving? How are you acting? How are you taking? I think we need to look at the accountability of ourselves first before we go look at the kids. And that's something that, if you guys are on Instagram, my sweet friend Amy at Raising Little Disciples, and then Maria at Barefooted Arrows, both with them this week, we were talking about just the accountability of ourselves before getting on the kids for whatever the issues are that we're having. And Maria at Barefooted Arrows is actually going to share about it with our spring magazine that's coming out March 1st. So that'll be super, super awesome. So definitely quieting your voice instead of yelling. I think other people, we're saying here, Morgan, you too. Yeah. Getting quieter sometimes really definitely helps, instead of just shouting. I know it's hard not to. And I think I yell less. I don't think I I yell like I used to. And
Still fuss, but
Brandon
a lot
says
of
I still fuss, but okay, well, I'll start doing the right thing for fuss. I'll try to stop
Now, you
fussing.
come from a family of
He says I come from a family of fussers, which is true.
It is 100%.
It's very true. We're
I'm not even being mean about that.
okay. Yeah, we got it. Fussing. Okay, Lex says I do yell less, and that was something that I did want. I felt very upset with myself that I did that, and so it's silly, but just having the rings or something like that. Yeah, every time you're unkind in some way, make an effort to show kindness 5 different ways to that same person. Okay, other people are fussers too. It's not just me. Make me feel better, anyways.
Stop it.
But I think, doing some little thing like that to try to realize that you're doing it, right? It's like a multiple step process. First, you have to realize that you're the problem and where the problem lies, and try to just be aware of what you're doing so that way you can change that behavior. Because so often I think we just shout, or we just yell, or we just fuss, and you've done it for so long that you honestly don't realize you do it until your kids start behaving in that way. And then you see an undesirable trait in them and you're like, oh, stop doing that. That's bad. And it's like, well, where do you think they learned it from? They learned it from us, but we just have done it for so long that we don't realize we're doing it. That's what I have found anyways. And I do love the thing whenever I see, whenever you see an unkind act of some sort, to not only apologize for whatever unkind act, that you've just done or you've seen someone, do, but then have them go and do something to serve in kindness. That's a big one that I've been trying to do with Lily lately, because we've been having a lot of unkind things happening. And so not only do we have her stop whatever she's doing, but then we have her go and serve that person with 3 different acts of service, to do that. And it's funny to see that heart change, as she's going through and doing all of that. I think another thing that was a big answer that we had here was just guilt. I never have it together enough. I'm not doing good enough. I know people talk about like mom shaming and stuff, but I think for the most part, we shame ourselves more than anyone else outside shames us. And so that's a big struggle parenting wise, is just to think, you're not doing good enough. Your house isn't good enough, your homeschool isn't good enough, your parenting isn't good enough. Really, you can apply this, I think, to every possible category. And maybe there are some areas that you genuinely do need to improve on, right? Maybe you are a fusser and we need to stop fussing so much. Maybe there is, thank you. Maybe there is something genuinely that could deserve, some work and some attention, I'm sure. But yeah, we're always our hardest critic, and that's got to be something. I mean, it's our sinful nature, and I don't think that it's ever going to go away. And I don't think necessarily that it should go away, because we should be assessing ourselves every day, just across the board, really, in every department. And where do we need to go to prayer and humble ourselves on and improve on and stuff. But I think that is definitely one that moms, we're really bad with the whole guilt thing. We're super bad with that. I don't know if there's necessarily an answer for that or a way to fix that, but I think we really need to watch ourselves with that. Autism guilt is hard to stop. As a parent of a child with autism, guilt is hard to stop. Yeah, I completely see that. I can't imagine. You definitely got to have, dealing with any special needs is going to put you in a totally different category, for the different struggles and stuff that you come with. And I don't think that we're taking it seriously enough to go to God in prayer and lay our guilt down with that. Yeah, Lex says this here. Remember that conviction comes from God, but condemnation does not. And we really have to look at the difference in that. We can be so mean. Women, I think, are very mean in general. Unfortunately, that's one of our really bad traits we have. But we can be very mean to one another and to ourselves. Yes, we do need to be accountable. Obviously, there's that. But we have to, I don't know if there's any other. That is next week's video. We're talking more about all this women stuff. But I think taking it to prayer immediately when we start to feel us with these guilt issues is got to be our only fix. I don't know if there's anything much better than that. Another big struggle that we had a lot of comments about was just gentleness, right? We look at like the ideal woman, Proverbs 31, how we should be, right? Gentle and kind, forgiving, all these different traits that we know are good traits that we need to have. But dang, it's hard to be gentle, especially when you've got kids running around and the house is a mess and nobody wants to listen and everybody's acting a fool and you're trying to get a million things done and nobody can listen and they probably haven't even brushed their teeth even though you told them that 7,000 times that day. Gentleness is hard as a parent. Moms, dads, all of us, I think, struggle with that. I know sometimes when I am being the least gentle, I've noticed that Brandon can come in and help counterbalance me with great gentleness. And sometimes when he's lost his gentleness, I feel myself, kind of seeing that, and I can be more gentle to try to help balance one another. But obviously that's not a perfect fix all of the time. And I think that's, again, a lot of this is just, we have to realize when that moment comes that we are not behaving in the way that Christ has shown us to behave, and we have to start realizing that and redirecting ourselves. Let me see what Morgan just said. Just having children, you're superheroes. I have a child, you're awesome. Yeah. Some days we have off days, and we're always going to have off days where we are not being gentle, we are not talking kindly, we are not having patience. And I think that's so much looking at how does God parent us. We need to take that and use it in how we parent our children. So why are kids any different, right? Some days our kids are off and attitudes are on fire. They don't want to listen to anything. They're just completely off rails. We need to make sure that we are fed the Spirit so that way we are responding with patience and gentleness and kindness, forgiveness, and all of those things to our kids when they're having their off days, because that's what we want God to do with us when we're having our off days, which we're all guilty of, sometimes more than we would probably care to admit. I think Brandon and I both have had a very rough week this week and probably needed all of that more this past week than any of the other weeks in recent times. So I'm definitely thankful that God showed that to us this week. So I need to make sure that I'm just as aware and showing that to my kids on the weeks that they need it as well. And that falls into another big one you guys all said, was just setting a better example. I think we all would, everybody wants to say, right, do as I say, not as I do. And that's complete nonsense. Why on earth would we say that? That just makes everything about you meaningless. You've got to walk the walk and set the example, right? Christ didn't show up, live in one life, and then preach in a different story, right? He lived it. He actually did it. And that's what makes his words so true and so impactful, and why they've lasted for the past 2,000 years, because he came and he did exactly what he said. So you can strive to live in the way he did because he did it. You're not going to be perfect like him, right? Because we're all falling short of the glory of God, but he did it. And so we know that we have somebody that we can truly believe in and believe what they said because they did it. So we can try every day to do the best of our ability. Not that we're perfect by any means, but we can try. Being present is another big struggle. And I know that's really hard in a world with a million distractions and phones and TV and work and computers and social media and everything, really, but trying to be present in our kids' day-to-day activities. I shared, I don't remember if I shared it in a Mary More Than Martha that already posted or if it's the one coming up next week, but I shared one of the greatest mom fails with not just struggling to be present. Message Richard. Oh, okay. Where I really struggled with trying to be present with my kids. And I noticed one thing that kills me, because I'm bad too, right? I'm on my phone trying to keep up on the social media stuff, answer comments, get emails taken care of, take care of things for our business, do like 9 billion different things. And it's so easy to have it on your phone and just try to take care of it real quick. But then I noticed when Virginia was young, when she was like a little toddler, she would come up to me, and when she would talk to me, she would put her hand over my phone, because she knew that I wasn't truly paying attention when I was still dealing with emails and doing whatever I was doing on my phone. And so she would come up and put her hand over my phone while she talked to me. And that was such a, oh my gosh, I hate myself right now. Why am I doing that? Yeah, Brandon will come in and color with the girls, right? I leave a vase on our dining room table of like colored pencils and stuff like that. And so the kids, all of that stuff for school and then just stuff is sitting there. And Brandon's really good at that. He will come up and just sit down and color with them. Just taking, Stephanie at Minimalist Mom Life on Instagram this week was talking about how she sets 15-minute blocks for things that she wants to spend more time with each day. Right? Because 15 minutes is like no time at all. Everybody's got 15 minutes they can find in their day. So like for her, she wanted to learn how to play the piano. So she practices 15 minutes every day practicing to play the piano. Or she wanted more time to get to read through some books. So for 15 minutes each day, she sits down and reads. We can all sneak away 15 minutes of time. But imagine these little things that we want to work on, right? Like being truly present with each child, one-on-one, no distractions. You can every day spend 15 minutes just, you and one child, one-on-one, truly connecting and talking and being together. Little things like that, you start them and those just become the norm, those little tiny pieces that we see, all throughout the day. And then next thing you know, those things grow and they improve and they get better and better. I think that's a great little tip or, technique to do to kind of get in throughout the day. Sit down and color together, sit down and read, sit down and play a game, anything like that. Even when you're super busy and you have a million things going on, you can hole out 15 minutes. That's an easy thing to do. Another big struggle that you guys suggested was self-control, like what I want my kids to be able to do. How are we teaching our kids to have great self-control if us ourselves don't have great self-control and aren't working towards having self-control? Self-control is like that one thing that if you have that, you really can handle anything in life, because self-control is what everything kind of really boils down to be. And so I think that's got to be a good one that we look at and we focus on, and we ourselves have to grow in that first if we want our kids to be better and have greater self-control. Especially now, we are so quick to just, everything has to be instant, right? We have to have it right now or forget it. Everything's over. I think our kids have really had a dose of that. Our internet has been down like all week. So nobody could get anything instantly this week because, hey, Claudia, because nothing was instant when you have no internet, right? So we have to figure it out and make do with all these like old fashioned things that they wanted to play with because nobody had the internet. But
this bread tastes like cologne.
I don't know what to tell you about that.
I'm sorry.
But self-control, yes, that's definitely a big one. We have to get better with that, so that way we can expect our children to be able to do that as well. Another big one that I saw a lot was you guys talking about consistency with like your little kids. You need your internet to crash. Well, come over to our house because it's been a struggle all week. I actually did tell the kids a few times this week, I was like, you know what? I kind of actually like not having internet in the house. I think I more might have Daddy like go downstairs and yank the plug and we'll be like, oh no, internet's down.
I can't.
But then he can't work, so that means
I wasn't able to.
Yeah, Brandon couldn't work on like anything because he didn't have the internet. But it was kind of nice not having the internet. I kind of liked it. But consistency with dealing with young kids and then also dealing with your older kids. This is something we tell our kids all the time. I really think it's like a trickle-down effect. So I've noticed that if Travis isn't acting right, it trickles down, and Lily isn't, Virginia isn't. I mean, it just kind of goes down that way. And so I tell them all the time that I need to deal with the stuff up here before this stuff down here gets better. So if I'm having issues with Travis, I'm trying to think of something, talking back or arguing or not doing what he's supposed to or whatever. If I can't get him to get it right, then that's the example he's setting for the younger ones. So number one, I need to look at myself and where do I need to make changes and improve or whatever in the problem. And then going to my oldest and kind of working my way down on, hey, you're an example to your younger siblings, and so if you're not kind of toeing the line up here, what you're supposed to be doing, that makes it really impossible to get anybody else to fall in line, because you're setting the example to them and you're kind of going to show them how to behave and how to act. And so we've got to work from here down until trying to get consistency with the little ones while the older ones are kind of doing whatever. Yeah, I think it's darn near impossible. So I think kind of making him understand the importance of what his role as the older sibling is, and the importance of that and the responsibility of that. And there's a great reward in that as well that I think he sees. Hopefully I don't want to just totally talk for Travis, but I think he really sees that, and to kind of act accordingly. Each other's energy makes a huge difference, and it starts with us. If mom and dad are grumpy and stressed and just bad, it kind of sets the energy for everyone else in the house. And I think it's definitely a trickle down effect from mom and dad to the oldest kids and then down to the little ones. We see all of that kind of play together. And another thing that I think we all struggle with a lot, our girls, Travis, they just adore him. They absolutely adore them. I am so proud of our children's relationships with one another. My husband has very strained relationships with his siblings and always has. And so that was one thing with parenting that he always was extra focused on, is that what happened with his family is not going to be what happens with our family. And so making sure that they truly understand the importance of the relationships with one another has always been like of utmost importance with him. Hey, buddy, you are there. I wasn't trying to talk for you. So if I was wrong in what I said, you can say something, because I wasn't trying to talk for you. But the relationships they have with one another, I mean, sure, they're siblings, they get on each other's nerves from time to time, but I genuinely would say that I think my kids are literally one another's best friends. They really are. And they just adore one another. The girls just, their brother. There is no one better, than their brother. Even little Olivia, who's just a year old, she loves Travis. Last night, the poor kid was trying to go to sleep, and she kept crawling down the hallway, trying to bust into his room because she just wanted him. Like, we couldn't get her to go to bed because she just wanted Travis. It was the cutest thing ever. Looking at the past and the other things, we have to realize we're all imperfect people. We all come from imperfect families, of course, but what are the struggles that we've had in our own lives that we want to make sure are not being repeated for our children to have to deal with as well. So, and I know that's hard, kind of, not that Brandon had as big as a gap as Chloe has with her siblings, but he had a big one. Like, he was a baby when they were all teenagers, and then they were all off and gone, living their own lives, doing their own things. And so he pretty much was an only child in many ways, right? Because they were all grown and gone. And so there is a lot of disconnect and issues there, which it stinks. And I don't know what the answer to that is, because it is a very difficult situation that you have to kind of figure out. I don't think, again, there is a like one size fits all answer. But that's why for him, pushing the sibling relationship is just a really, really, really big thing that he has always been very harsh. I mean, not that it was like mean, but it's just always been of utmost importance to him. And now that our kids are getting older, we just really see, I guess, that hard work paying off, I guess, really. And even when family does come over, I think they see the difference in our kids that way, because our kids are together every single day, all day long. And the couple times a year that they get, kind of split up even for a brief little tiny period of time, it shows, because they cannot wait to get back together. It drives them nuts to be apart, which is awesome.
Gigi laugh. Well, I guess it was almost 2 years.
Yeah, a couple years ago, Virginia went and stayed at my mom's for a couple nights.
Yeah, just
a couple nights. And I mean, she was like crying hysterically, like couldn't handle it. It was
just a year in November, so it was just over a year.
I don't know. Anyways, they like to be together. The other point that I'd asked about was, what's something that you would like to do better with when it comes to aspect of parenting and what you're struggling with your kids. One was understanding where they're at. Oh, sorry. We're looking out the front window and we just like the whole flock of chickens are just like running with like the turkey following behind them. Because in case, you guys got a glimpse of us, talking nothing about our chickens this past week in our vlogs, but that really is the day in and day out. It's a lot of talk about chickens, and they have been laying eggs like crazy. So our day pretty much revolves around looking for eggs, picking up eggs, counting how many eggs, looking at our bowls of eggs. Everything's about the chickens. They're so awesome. If you can get chickens, we highly suggest you go do it. Just get lots and lots of chickens because they're awesome. They poop everywhere, but they're awesome. But understanding where they're at and trying to, I think that is something we need to be sensitive to and try to connect with our kids on, coming to their level and being where they're at and letting them really kind of cultivating a true connectedness there with our kids. Something I actually did with Travis years back. You do need chickens. Everyone needs chickens. We're going to be like the worst chicken enablers ever. We're like down for spring so we can get more chickens. But something I did with Travis a long time ago, and then we kind of just stopped. I don't really remember why. And then my friend Lexi, who we do Mary More Than Martha with, she's been doing it with her daughter. So it kind of made me get back to it, but having a conversation journal. So a journal with each individual kid where you just write notes to one another. So every evening before bed, like Lily and I are doing it right now, doing a lot. Virginia's still smaller, so for her, it's more so like drawing pictures or something like that. But Lily and I have really been loving it. Every evening before bed, she'll sit down and write me a little note. And then she leaves it sitting on like her bench. So that way I can grab it and write her a little note back before I go to bed, and then leave it sitting in her room. And then she, we kind of just write back and forth to each other and talk about things that maybe we wouldn't get a chance to, or she wouldn't feel comfortable talking to me about face to face, possibly. Not that I've really dealt with that yet with her, but it's such a good idea. It's so simple, and it's so easy to overlook the simple things. But even like if you do use online stuff and you just want to, text each other, send a little message, or have a little notebook that you can write letters back and forth. I mean, you can go to Dollar Tree and pick up some little spiral bound notebooks. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be anything fancy or crazy, but just a little note of something small. Lily, sometimes she'll write me, it's like 2 sentences. It's not even that it's this big, huge drawn out thing, but just to have that, I think is a really cool way to really see what things they want to talk about. Yes, you do not suck, Claudia. You're an awesome mom. We're all doing this. We're all, to be honest though, we all suck at something, okay? We're all failing in some area of our lives because that's life. And so instead of guilting ourselves about it or getting upset about it, every day we get to start fresh, right? Every day's a new day. Every day's a clean slate. Every day's a fresh start. We don't need to hold on to the things of the past. You don't need to hold on to any of that because that's done and over with. And holding on to it and beating ourselves up over it, it is not going to fix anything, right? So if we've prayed about it, we've gone to God about it,
What did the neighbors say?
What? Oh,
it didn't have any blood on it, so it already like rose Jezebel.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Bring the egg in here. Sorry, hold on. Let me see. Oh, let me see.
She's laid before it's big and has some blood. Well, it has blood on it.
Can you guys see? It's even got some little speckled spots.
It has blood too.
Okay.
So pretty clean.
All right, go put it in the egg bowl.
Okay. So maybe she isn't new because I saw
We
it.
have these one hens, and when they were babies, they looked like they had like really thick like eyeliner and mascara on, like Egyptians or something. So Lily named one of them Jezebel.
You asked me to name her Jezebel.
Yeah, so she named it Jezebel, and so Jezebel just laid
Oh,
an
you
egg.
came up with that.
Yeah. So
No, Mom said you should name her Jezebel. I was like, okay, Jezebel.
so Jezebel laid an egg. Good job, Jezebel.
I was petting her, and she didn't care.
Okay, now I got to try to remember what we're doing. See, it's all about chickens and eggs. I think that's another point, connecting with them all personally, making sure that we have that one-on-one time, something like the little conversation journal, or starting something where you take, yeah, I love the conversation journals. Taking 15 minutes a day and just making sure, not that it has to be.
I'm going to interrupt real quick. I think it's a great way to stay connected, even with the older kids. I think you should still do it with Travis too.
Yeah, I love the conversation journal, especially with older kids and teens, and going into that, right? Because we want to be preparing them to go be adults and live their lives and do all of that stuff, but you still want to have that closeness and that openness where they can come to you and talk with you, even about stuff that's maybe a little more sensitive. And sometimes it's easier. I mean, I think we've all been there, where there's some things that it's just easier to like maybe write about instead of talking to someone face to face. And so it just makes it a little easier to kind of open that door, and then maybe, you know, move to the point where it is something that you're having more of a one-on-one conversation with. You know, maybe you could, you know, take each kid, you know, each weekend or whatever, mom and dad take turns taking one kid individually out to get an ice cream or have lunch or something like that, just to set that little bit of time aside that you were getting just that one-on-one connectivity. And we have to make that, you just have to make that a priority. And it's hard, and it's never going to be perfect. And you're going to have times that you mess up and you don't do it, because that's just life, right? And we all are dropping the ball somewhere. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. I think it's good for our kids to see that we are not superheroes. We do not have it perfectly. Sometimes we're going to fail. Sometimes we're going to let them down. But how do we respond in that? Do we humble ourselves before our kids? Do we apologize? Do we ask for their forgiveness and for their grace? We want God to do that for us, so we have to do it as well. And I think that's a very good lesson that our kids need to understand and learn from. And I'd much rather my children see it modeled from my husband and I, because I know our hearts and where we're trying to come at everything from a biblical perspective. I want that to be their go-to, versus not really touching on these kind of hard subjects, throwing them out to the world and hoping that the world teaches them to do it properly. Come on, that's not going to happen. So I think that's a big one to try to do and to model and to show with them. I think another big one that you guys responded a lot about was being the godly parent that we want to be. Sorry, I've been practicing trying to apologize. It has been a hard thing. Humbling ourselves and realizing there's a need to come to our children and apologize and ask for their forgiveness. I feel like that's something nobody really talks about. We don't spend much time on or think there's any need for. And I think that's huge. With our marriage, that's an important thing to do. With our friendships, our own family, but even for our kids, I think coming before our children, apologizing to them for things that we've done, asking for their forgiveness. I know we've even done that, like with the yelling thing, right? I said I yelled way too much, and I knew that. I went to the kids when I got the rings that I was going to put on my finger so I could switch things off of my finger every time I yelled to help be accountable to myself for it. But I apologized to the kids. I said, hey, I'm sorry, that was wrong. I shouldn't do that. And I want to try to do better. So help me as we try to do better in this, because it was wrong, and mommy shouldn't behave that way, and it's not right, and it's not fair to you guys, and it's not the person that I want to be. But I think that's a big thing to come and apologize to them.
Yeah, Claudia, we all suck. It's not just you, it's every single person.
Yep, that's what I said.
And yeah, and we all fall short.
Brandon's sitting right over here.
Right.
He is here, though. You can't talk to him. I think, though, one of the big things we have is, especially when it comes like before bedtime or when you're trying to get meals ready, times like that where you just know things are going to be on edge. I think we all have bedtime meltdowns. My girls will not brush their teeth and put on pajamas at nighttime. It's nearly as hard as getting them to get dressed and brush their teeth in the morning. But sometime at nighttime, it's like a 20-hour process, I feel like, to get them to get ready for bed. Like, unless we physically are following them around to each step and practically doing it for them, even though they're 8 and nearly 6, it's like a disaster. And of course, our patience is fried because we're tired. It's the end of the day. Can we please just get ready for bed? Why is this so difficult? Like, it's so hard, and you can tell that's where you're like being tested. Okay, are we going to show grace? Are we going to show stuff? How are we going to lead them through this? And sometimes it literally does take where Brandon or I will go through and literally stand there with them as they brush their teeth, as they get their pajamas, as they pick up their room, or whatever it might be. And I can tell that when we have simple routines that I make sure I am proactive in making sure we are doing and following, it makes that process better. But when everything starts to slip, it's usually because those other things have been slipping. And so it's kind of just a product of that kind of falling out of line. So trying to set up a smoother routine. I think we should talk about the struggles and the stuff, because that's the real stuff. We are all struggling. We all have faults. We all have areas that need attention. And I really think in everything we've been doing with the blog, with these Q&As, with the Mary More Than Martha, our podcast, let's talk about those things because they're real.
Well, good, Claudia, because I'm going to start our first Bible study with the Beatitudes. So
yeah, Brandon has been praying over. We want to start.
Yeah, I got completely led a different way on that. So
he was trying to get started with all the stuff that we want to start doing with our ANP Home Church and getting all this stuff out there. And so he was thinking one idea, and then he wanted to go back to a gospel and or the gospel, but start going through stuff. And then especially this past week, he's been hit really hard with his depression and issues and things that he can talk about. But he was like, you know what? I'm going to change it all up. The first one that we are going to start with ANP Home Church is the Beatitudes, where Jesus walks out and he says, hey, all these really crappy things that nobody wants to do, blessed are they, so that's where Brandon is working on, and everything is going to start on. So if you guys think of him.
And that helped me really reading over the prayer requests and just different messages and different people's situations that they're in. I mean, including everybody on here.
Yeah.
I think about this consistently, and in the midst of my goal this past week, I remember everybody else too, and so that's what kind of led me there.
Yep. So he is. Good morning. He is working on that. So our first one will be starting in the Beatitudes, which I'm really excited about. So I am praying for him. If you guys want to pray for him and just kind of lift him up as he is working on that and getting all of that put together. I
wanted to have it by this, done, but with the internet and everything, I wasn't able.
We had some issues this week. Another big thing is one of the other big struggles that you guys suggested was obedience, right? We want our kids to be obedient. That's, again, another one where we need to look at ourselves. Are we being obedient? Are we doing what Scripture tells us we are to be doing? Are we being obedient in these things in our life and modeling obedient, choices to our children? That's a big one that I think we need to look at ourselves first. Another thing Amy at Raising Little Disciples was talking about is to remember that a disobedient child doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It's not the same thing. Obedience is always an issue that we're always struggling with and dealing with, right? We all know that we need to read our Bibles every day and do these different things.
The other thing, I saw an article.
Let's get you over here.
I saw an article the other day, which it was like a worldly article, so I didn't, when I say that, it was it wasn't that great in a couple spots, but she had one point in there that was really good when she was talking about disobedient children, saying, that doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem. Find a way to look at that there's a comfort there. Think about the child that doesn't have that comfort, that's scared to be able to have that type of reaction, that type of reaction to their parent, when, there's a lot of children who are too scared. And, we know all sorts of horror stories of kids, and there's all kinds of abused children and horrible things out there. So sometimes a child that feels comfortable enough to act out it isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be viewed as, okay, at least this child is comfortable enough to do this.
To show you.
So I know that I'm showing enough, kindness and care and general parenting that you're doing this. So it's not necessarily a horrible thing. You can definitely look at it in a different light sometimes.
Well, and I think like,
And that can help you in your punishment. And that can help you humble yourself, and that can help you, take action.
well, I think in all openness here, I would say Lily is our most disobedient child. I'm not saying she's bad, but she is our most disobedient child. She is that, like you said, Chloe, you say yes, she says no, you say stop, she says go. Like Lily is our strong-willed child. She is, and always has been. And she's very much me, but when Brandon, eye rolling, I know, Lily, yeah.
Oh.
Lily is very much me, but with like Brandon's strong will and like determination. It's the worst mix ever.
We joke about it all the time.
But hold on. But I feel like I've really noticed that when her disobedience is at its peak, there's always this core thing that's being overlooked.
Yeah, some reason.
Her disobedience is just her reaction to some heart issue, something that is hurting her feelings, making her sad, some heart issue that's buried underneath the layers. That's just how she responds to it.
Usually it is how she tells you that she needs affection and time.
Yeah. So, and that's why I love that little saying, the kids that need the most time and affection are the ones that are asking for it in the most unloving of ways. So like Lily, when she is just getting, oh my gosh, what is this child's deal? Like, I am going to lose my mind. Whose kid are you? You are completely off the rails. When it gets like that, it's usually because she is just crying out for love, for affection. And so we've had some mornings where like it starts with Bible study first thing in the morning, and she is just on fire, just being rude, being nasty, just one thing after another. And we're like, I just want to send you to your room all day, and we need to punish this because this is bad. We don't behave that way, right? So that's our go-to. We need to punish this because the way you're behaving is not acceptable. I agree, the behavior is not acceptable. But the reason why she's behaving that way is because something is off with her, and she's hurting in some way, for whatever the case may be. But again, how does God parent us? When we are hurting and we have something that is making us sad or upset or whatever, do we want him to just be harsh with us, right? Sometimes it is necessary. A harsh rebuke is necessary. Of course, I'm not taking away from that. But if God knows us and he knows our hearts and he looks at our hearts in all things, he knows when we need that extra reminder of love, of kindness, of forgiveness, of whatever it may be. And so sometimes we'll have that, like I shared our thrifting blog. That was a day where Lily just woke up and she was on fire and it was not going well. And we were like, oh my goodness, somebody deal with this child. And when we got done with Bible, I went and I told my husband, I said, I'm just going to get Lily ready and I've got a couple things to go do. And her and I are just going to hit up the thrift stores because I know that that's something that one-on-one time and going to thrift stores is like speaking her love language.
Yeah,
she just loves it.
Well, I think that was really easy for me to see because I think that was part of my personality. Mm-hmm. Like when the more you push away and the more upset you are, the more you need that time and comfort from.
But it's hard to realize sometimes because you see someone acting that way.
Yeah, because you just react. It's the first thing that you see, which is a disobedient child that's talking back. You don't take the time or the patience to find out the reasoning behind it. Sometimes they just want to be a jerk. I mean, that's possible too. But for the most time,
of course, yeah,
there's definitely something to it.
One of the other ones was talking about influences. I don't think as parents that we can be too protective over what's influencing our children. I will be completely against the norm of this world, but I don't think we can be too protective what friends they have, who they're hanging out with, what other homes they're going and spending time in. And just because it's someone that you met within the church or something like that doesn't mean that you're like,
but how you raise them too, especially now when they're little, you'll find that they turn from things themselves and they don't want, they themselves make these decisions you don't even have to make it forcibly for them. I
Yeah.
think there's so many things even with our kids that they just wouldn't sit down and watch a lot of these, fake TV or want this certain thing just because they know it's meaningless or they know it's wrong
Yeah.
or these types.
And you're right. Discuss, don't argue. That's a very good point. We can discuss many things. I'm not here to fight you. We're not arguing this. Okay, you talk about want to hide in a cave. We live in the middle of nowhere on the most.
Yes.
so, but we definitely, I guess, are probably kind of hiders too. But I think, I don't think we can ever be too protective over the influences that our children are getting though. And that means what they're accessing on the computer, on the phones, on TV, in their music, the friends that they make, the places that they go. I really don't think, and that's part of it. We, when I see so many parents that have their kids still in like public school, right, and they're not homeschooling, and I'm looking at these struggles that they are asking about or discussing with, and it's like, number one, are you in the Word every day with your children without fail? You have to do that. If you want to fix parenting things, everybody's got to get right with God before anything's going to be made better. So if you and your husband and your children are not truly in the Word with, and studying and doing this, you have to do that stuff first if you want things to get better. But what are these other influences that are coming up? And you're right. If kids are, I think of, oh my gosh, Brandon and I went to private Christian schooling, but then went to the public high school. And you think about those outside influences and what's coming in, forget it, out. And that's a lot.
And I think that was one of the points why, I know Bodie Bauckham has talked about it. I know Andy's talked about it, about homeschooling your kids, because that is a major thing. That's just a known thing. Like, we just send our junior high students and our high school students to these public schools, and just on the hope that something horrible doesn't happen or they make horrible decisions.
Oh, have a nice day, Tamara. We'll see you guys later.
Bye,
I know
Tamara.
we'll kind of wrap this up. I know we've been going for a while. I love that we get to do this with you.
Everybody's hungry.
No, but I think, and I feel so bad, but I see even our close friends and family that kids are in public school, and then I look at just the way these kids, especially hitting middle school and high school, you start seeing the way these kids start changing and start acting and different things, and you look at just all this outside influence that comes in, and you start seeing all these problems coming up and all this other stuff, and it's like, why keep sending your kid into that system? I don't understand it.
It's not, we're almost to the point now where we can't, as believers, and I wanted to make that point was, as believers, how we can send our children. I understand it's not available for some, so I don't want to make anybody feel completely convicted, but still, as believers, we need to seriously ask ourselves that question. And if you are in a situation where you can get out and can change something, do it.
Yeah. Influences was a big one that you guys suggested when I asked the questions. And you're right. We've got to protect, I don't care how old your kid is, we've got to protect the outside influences that are coming in to our children. Okay, the last one that I want to get to, we didn't get to all of these. Maybe we can do it real quick. Family devotions for all ages. Brandon and I are not big do a devotional type thing. I know there are some cool devotional things out there, but you've got to be just in the Word with your family every single day without fail.
Super careful with devotionals, because they tend to make ideas off of short passages.
Some devotionals might be cool. They might be great. But I don't think a devotional should replace the time just opening your Bible and reading it.
No, absolutely not.
It can't. And until your family has to be opening that Bible and reading it together every single day without fail, if you want to truly see big changes and big things happening, you've got to do that. We all have to do that. That's so important. Another couple things that we got a lot of is dealing more so with little kids and their behavior. Thank you. Little kids and their behavior, especially when it comes to church and not behaving properly and things like that. Brandon and I are not believers in splitting the kids up, right? So church is for the adults and the kids always get sent off over here. We're not big on that. Everything's all together. Little kids are going to be little kids. Do not expect perfection from toddlers and things like that. I think, again, just having grace and patience and all of that. It's a learning process. It's not something that's just made perfect right now. And again, just having grace in the process. So, all right. I know everybody's got to go, so I won't sit here and keep on going on that. We can always talk on that later. But thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us. We appreciate it. I hope you guys all have an awesome Saturday. You can check out the Mary, More, and Martha if you haven't watched that already today. And then Friday, we've got new stuff coming out. I told you guys at the beginning about the podcast this week. I'm working on videos. I don't have any of them done yet, so hopefully I don't get behind. And then we will see you guys next Saturday at noon and talk more about marriage. So if you have any questions for Brandon and I, you can go listen to our Raw Intimate Interview podcast. There's 3 of them, but we talk very openly about a million things within our relationship. So you'd like to ask, I mean, you're more than welcome to
If
ask.
you want to pry into our personal lives completely, go ahead.
Brandon says, yeah, if you want to pry into our personal lives completely, go ahead, knock yourselves out. So we'll be doing that and then talking about the topic of marriage and relationships and things. So send us any questions if you have them, any prayer requests, please send them over our way. You can leave a comment here or email us at theminimalisthomeschool@gmail.com. if you have something privately that you'd like to send. And then we will see you guys all next week. Thanks for hanging with us. Are you going to come say bye at least real quick? Like pop in? Bye.
Bye.
Yes, we hate the separation too. All right, guys.